I I found this book today. Well, I was looking kind of around for some dictionaries and stuff, but I came across this punctuation, its principles and practice, and I figured, I scrolled down here and I seen this, and I thought, well, I'm gonna do a video on this, and I figured I'll just start reading it and see where we end up. So, it's difficult for us who live under modern conditions to realize the feelings and aims of the man who first tried to express himself in a form more permanent and far-reaching than speech. But of one thing we may feel tolerably certain: his effort presupposes a degree of self-consciousness and a power of constructing conditions other than those immediately present, which markedly separate him from his predecessors. At the same time, however, his powers of abstraction were but weakly alive. He was still unable adequately to put himself in the position of his reader, and, as a result, the correct understanding of the rude pictures in which he recorded his experiences involved some antecedent knowledge of the circumstances described. The form of his expression was simple and direct, yet it was not altogether clear and complete. We, on the other hand, are in possession of a highly complex instrument of expression, an instrument that has been developed and refined to meet the needs as well of the reader as of the writer. During the long process of growth which has brought our written language to its present wide range of power, certain conventional signs have slowly come into general use in order to indicate the grouping and sequence of ideas, and at the same time to simplify and safeguard the correct interpretation of a writer's meanings. We may best judge how far we are dependent on these artificial devices by reading the following piece of 19th century prose, which is printed in what may be called primitive simplicity. Now you notice, well, it says here conventional signs. So we know, or what I see here is the fact that there's no spaces here means that yes, you can read these signs all go straight together. You know, you can read this because it's all smashed together. How painful to see. I mean, yeah, it'd be a little difficult, but you can follow it. I mean, and it makes, I get what they're saying now. This goes right in with what I'm always saying. Or when I'm talking about the court documents, you can't read them signs like that when they're separated. When you have an all caps word and then you have a space, you have a completely independent and separate sign, and there's a full stop after that. And here's why. The defect of which we are most vividly aware in reading such a passage as this is the want of word separation. Without laboriously forming each word out of its constituent letters, we are unable to grasp the author's meaning, and the slow interpretation involved in this almost literal spelling of every word baffles and irritates us when contrasted with our usual method of reading. In ordinary reading, we take in the words at a glance and are rarely conscious of them as units, concentrating our attention on meaning rather than on form. We tend more and more to merge their individuality in the phrase or sentence of which they form part. Nevertheless, though, at the present day it is necessary to avoid by word separation the diversion of interest from the subject matter to its formal elements. The general practice of word separation is only comparatively recent. As we shall have occasion to notice in our next chapter, the Christian era was some centuries old before the practice was commonly adopted by scribes and copyists. The difference of usage in this respect in the case of inscriptions is noteworthy, and in order to illustrate it, we shall describe shortly a few outstanding instances. Here we go. The inscription on the famous Lebanon bowl is probably the oldest extant in the Phoenician alphabet. It is ascribed to the end of the 11th or the beginning of the 10th century BC, during the reign of Hiram, king of the Sidonians. It runs from right to left, around the edge of the bowl, the letters following each other in close succession. There is no separation of words nor pointing of any kind. On the other hand, the celebrated Moabite stone, ascribed to the 9th century BC, shows a clear separation of words by single dots and of sentences written or sentenced by vertical stroke. The record is written in horizontal lines running from right to left. In considering the question of word separation with reference to Greek records, it is important to bear in mind that the Greeks had no current term exactly coextensive with our word. When defining noun and verb, Aristotle does not bring them under a simple class name, but describes them as a portion of discourse of which no part has a meaning by itself. The tendency of the Greek mind to make sense and significance the basis of division is further evidenced by the fact that even when word separation is made, the articles, particles, and other meaningless words remain attached to the words in connection with which their value in the sentence is determined. Right. And that's why you don't be needing all them articles, because they're modifying shit that you don't, yeah. That's, I mean, this is, you're not going to find a book like this today, and they're not going to tell you this. Amongst the oldest Greek inscriptions, one of the most notable is the famous 12-column record found in the wall of a mill on the site of Gortyn. It is written alternately from right to left and left to right, and the columns succeed each other from right to left. It dates from the end of the 7th or the beginning of the 6th century BC and contains provisions of private law relative to fines, divorce, laws of succession, and other matters. There is no word separation of any kind, but on one of the columns a curious sign, like two triangles placed horizontally with their apices together, is used to separate two clauses of the law. In one or two isolated cases belonging approximately the same period, an upright line is used as a mark of word separation, while on the famous marble from Sagon, dating from the first half of the 6th century BC, dots occur as the mark of division. There are two inscriptions on the marble. The first is in the Ionic dialect and character. The second, which is a repetition and at the same time an enlargement of the first, in the Attic. Both are written in alternating directions. In the Ionic version, some of the clauses are separated by two dots placed as in our colon, while in Attic, slightly later than the Ionic, two dots separate the significant words and three the clauses. One of the earliest instances of the division of subject matter into sections occurs on the bronze tablet from Oslion Lacreus, which sets forth the conditions for founding the colony of Naupactus. The first 9 letters of the alphabet are used to indicate the various sections, the letters being horizontal and pointing sometimes to the right and sometimes to the left, that are enclosed by two upright groups of 3 dots. The words, with the exception of articles, etc., are also separated by 3 dots. The decree dates from the beginning of the 5th century BC. With regard to the word separation of Latin inscriptions, here's where we wanted to get to. With regard to the word separation of Latin inscriptions, it is hardly necessary to say more than that only 1 dot is used instead of the 2 or 3 that are characteristic of the Greek. An interesting instance of the use of a single dot in Greek, probably due to Latin influence, occurs in the deed of conveyance of land engraved on the bronze tessera found near Croton. The document dates from the 6th century BC and is a model of neatness and simplicity. After an invocation of God and fortune, it proceeds as follows. So it is. Wow. But yeah, it's got the mid dots. It only remains to be noticed that the Latin inscriptions which deal with the ordinary facts and designations of life are generally expressed in conventional abbreviated forms. The dot of word separation then becomes identical with the dot of abbreviation. Okay, that's him, dude. The dot of word separation then becomes identical with the dot of abbreviation. There we go. Hey, you heard it here. That's why you can't read that shit, because it's grammatically incorrect. And here's your proof. I mean, here's your authoritative sources. Till next time. Take care.